Good morning, everybody. My name is Helen Brophy and I'm the Director here in Smurfit Executive Development. So it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning for our second webinar on Wednesday, the 8th of April. And we're delighted to be joined again by Deirdre McGinn. Just a few introductory words from myself. I won't be long at all. I want to thank certainly all of you for joining, and I hope you and your families are staying safe and well in these, we'll say, unprecedented times. I have to say from our side, we're really pleased over the last couple of weeks because we have now moved, 93% of all of our programs have now moved to online. So a big thank you to all of you who are participants joining us this morning. You've made an amazing transition into this new online world, and also a tribute to our great faculty and our team as well. So our subject this morning is looking at best practice in managing virtual teams in this new world. And I have the pleasure now of handing you over to Deirdre McGinn. So over to you, Deirdre.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back, and it's great to welcome all that were here last week, but also I know we've got lots of new participants this week also, so you're all very welcome. As Helen said, my name is Deirdre McGinn and I'm your guest speaker this morning, and we're going to look at best practice around managing teams in this new virtual world that we find ourselves. And I suppose from my perspective, you know, the whole world, or the whole topic of managing teams is quite vast. So just to set the scene, it's really about what I've learned as a leader over many years managing virtual teams and sharing, I suppose, best practice around how can you build and maintain trust with your team when they're not physically around you. How can you ensure that you're nurturing those team connections and building strong communication frameworks to help you do that. And then we're also going to look hopefully at how can you maintain productivity, or, you know, in the very best case, increasing productivity. So how can you help your teams thrive in this environment? So just to introduce myself for those that don't know me, I'm a proud alumnus from UCD Executive Development. I recently completed the Advanced Business and Executive Coaching Diploma, which was amazing. So if you want to deepen your coaching skills, I'd highly recommend it. I have 25 years of working in the technology industry. So that my most recent role was at LinkedIn. Before that, I worked with IBM, both in the UK and in Ireland, and before that with Oracle. So quite an extensive career in that industry, but in there I spent a lot of time managing virtual teams. And what I want to share with you today, as I said, is the best practice that I've gained from that. So we look at what our agenda is going to be. So when I was putting this together, I was thinking, about, the teams that I've managed in the past. And I think there's managing teams pre-COVID-19, and then there's managing virtual teams in the current situation. And I suppose the difference that we need to be aware of is pre-COVID-19, people chose to be at home. Whereas now there's a lot of people in situations where they've never been in this situation before, and they haven't necessarily chosen to be there. So helping them not feel isolated, helping them trust in the whole process of working at home is going to be is important. So we'll look at that in more detail. We're going to look at how to build connections with your team, not you with your team, but also your team with themselves. We'll look at maintaining and growing productivity, as I mentioned, and then some key takeaways that you can take back into your businesses. We're going to try and shake it up a little bit today. So I've got Michelle Burke, who is on screen. Hopefully you can see her. So Michelle's going to be our coordinator this morning. So I'm going to ask you to do two things. One is if you have any questions, please use the chat function on Zoom, which should be either in your left-hand corner, your right, or up on top on the right. And share, I'm going to do some crowdsourcing in terms of best practice. So if you've got some things that you are really working, or you've seen some things that are really working, I'd love you to share those with all of the participants on the call this morning. If I don't get a chance to answer all of your questions, I will after the event, and we'll send them back with the recording for today via the UCD Smurfit Executive Development email. I'm going to try and keep this to 45 minutes. So in your diary, it's in for an hour, but I want to keep it to 45 minutes so that you've got time at the end to get up, to walk around, to really contemplate all of the great knowledge that you've learned this morning, grab a cup of coffee and get yourself ready for your next meeting. Okay, so let's start with something that really struck me. And it's not just in our current environment, it's as leaders, always looking after yourself and managing yourself before you can manage other people. And, you know, I had 2 coaching conversations this week with 2 individuals that are 2 females. They're in pretty senior positions, and they just talked me through their week last week. And one, her husband is still physically going out for work. She's got twin girls who are 8. She's currently managing 28 direct reports. Not 18 direct reports. So last week she was juggling from conference calls to looking after the girls, homeschooling. And, you know, she was just saying it's just got so much busier and it's just so much more intense. Another individual that I was coaching is a single mother. She has a team of 80 people. 3 children in the house with her and a dog, and the dog needed to get walked. So it was just really struck me that unless we've got some boundaries and we're creating some energy management strategies to help ourselves, we're not going to show up well for our team. So in terms of boundaries, what I'm seeing is evening or afternoons are sort of flowing into evenings. Weekdays are flowing into weekends, and because we don't have the boundaries of getting physically up in the morning, shower, dressed, breakfast, commute, work, those are gone. So, and it's so important to try and bring some element of structure into your day so that you're not going to burn yourself out. In terms of some energy management strategies, so there's 4 dimensions of energy management. So there's your mental, your physical, your emotional, mental, physical, emotional, and your spiritual. So mental, it might be doing some meditation, if that's your thing, or finding ways of just getting your head focused. Physical is looking after your sleep patterns. We were just talking about this before we opened the call. People's sleep patterns are out of kilter right now. So what are the things we can do to support better sleep? Because sleep goes a long way to really improving your energy management. Exercise, of course. In terms of emotional, it's connecting with your loved ones, you know, making sure you're spending time with your loved ones. And then in terms of your spiritual energy is about purpose. So it's about doing the things that you love. So whether that's exercise, baking, yoga, meditation, whatever the things are, really try and create space within your week to do some of these things so that you are fully present and energized for your team. So, building trust in a virtual world. So I would hope that before all of this kicked off, that you had built a certain level of trust within your teams. It is a different, you know, when you're in a virtual world, it's different maintaining that trust, because you have to really dial up the level of communication and contact with your team, and it looks quite different. So the first thing I would suggest is having really clear expectations as to what you expect from individuals, your team, your peers, and your organization as a whole. The analogy I would use when I look at this sometimes, it's like going out at night and it's really foggy. It's sort of that really dense fog, and you're trying to get to your destination, but you're having to stop and start along the way. And if you haven't set clear expectations with your team, that's what's going to happen. You're not going to get that level of productivity that you need from them. Encouraging collaboration and teamwork. This tends to drop off when you're in a virtual world. So when you're in a physical office, it's easy to get up, go over to your teammate, go, you know, John, this is what I need. This is, you know, or I've done this piece of work, or can you help me do this? Or I need you to do this. And you don't have that in a virtual world, and people don't tend to ask questions. So you can get really busy being busy trying to figure stuff out. and forget that there's a whole raft of people out there that can support and help you. So I would definitely encourage you to, use the collaboration tools that your organization has provided for you. Encourage teamwork, and that might be, having daily huddles with your team to set the expectations for the day. I was talking to a client yesterday, and it's a HR function, and they're having to have these daily huddles because the needs of the business is changing so fast in this current environment. They're having to pivot quite quickly. So having that huddle in the morning has really helped them understand what the priorities are for the business. I think it's really important to have some fun at the minute. There's a lot of bad news around. So how can you create fun in a virtual world? And that's pretty tough. It's not as easy as it is, when you're physically or near people. So some of the things that I've seen are, when there's Zoom coffee mornings, so not coffee mornings, but at the start of the day, people are getting together, and it could be in the huddle just to have a coffee and talk through how they're doing, what's going on, tell funny stories, whatever it might be. Other ideas are, I've seen last Friday, there was a lot of social after work drinks on Zoom. I have to say I did participate, probably a little bit too much, but we won't talk about that. I've seen, so yesterday when I was talking to this particular client, in the past they've had around this time of year, they've had a bake-off for Daffodil Day. And so they can't physically do that now, but they're going to do that virtually. So encouraging their teams to go off and create all these beautiful things, and then judging them through pictures and potentially on the Zoom. So that, again, you're creating money for charity, and you're creating fun on your team. So this is where the crowdsourcing comes in. So we've got over 100 people on the call who I'm sure have much better ideas and greater ideas around creating fun. So please do share those in the chat box so we can all learn from some of the great things that are happening right now. Rewarding and recognition. So in any team, it's really important to do this, but I think it's easy when you can walk over to somebody's desk and clap them on the back and go, well done on doing that piece of work. You can't do that in a virtual environment. So doubling down on looking at the small wins, but also the bigger wins, and using the different communication tools that you have, or the different communication environments that you're creating. So it might be that, for an introvert, they might not want to be called out on a team call, but doing that in your one-to-one is important. For the extroverts, they love a bit of attention, and they love being recognized for what they're doing. And I would encourage you also, it's not just to say, this is what Deirdre did, it's getting them to share how they did it. And I think that creates lots of team engagement, and it helps that individual feel valued and recognized for the work that they're doing. Managing conflict is an interesting one, because I would say, right, it's easy to pick up on the cues when you're physically, with people. In a virtual world, it's more difficult. So you really have to be tuned in to what's happening with your team. And some of the things that you might start to recognize is body language, body posture, voice, tone of voice, how they're interacting with each other. Have people got a little bit short? Are they a bit snappy? And in terms of recognizing this, one, by recognizing it, that's automatically building trust with your team, because they see that you see, but also managing the situation quickly and ensuring that it's not allowed to fester within your team, I think is a really good thing to do. And that will not only build your reputation up as a strong manager, but it also creates that strong trust within your team. So Michelle, so is there anything coming in on the chat? Is there any questions that you might want me to answer?
Hi there, everybody, and it's great to see the chat happening. One piece, while building trust is important, we can see that this is going to go on for some time. So how do we maintain that trust into more habit virtually?
Okay, so thank you for the question, who was that from?
That was from Mary.
Okay, thank you, Mary. So I would say, Mary, for me, if you were to take one thing away from the trust, it's having those clear expectations. So taking all of that fog away from your team, helping them prioritize what's important, ensuring that they're not busy being busy, but they're focused on the right things. And you do that by setting clear expectations with them. That will be the one thing that I would encourage taking away. And, you know, it might be daily, and I'm not suggesting that you become micromanagers, but it's really, you know, that daily check-in in a virtual world can really help people stay focused on what's important. So I hope that answered the question. I'm going to move on to, thanks Mary, to nurturing team connection. So in essence, this is around fostering a strong culture of communication. So as the leader of the business, I believe it's your role to ensure you're fostering a strong culture of communication within your team. And there's many different ways of doing that. And it's around building a communication rhythm within your team. So, you know, morning huddles I talked about, maybe evening huddles, one-to-ones, team meetings, but creating a structure around your week so that people know when and how they're going to receive information. There's a lot of information overload right now. So, you know, within an organization, especially a larger organization, you potentially could have a steering committee that's looking after COVID-19. You've got your CEO, you've got your HR function, you've got you, and all this communication coming from all different levels. So although I'm suggesting that you over-index on communication right now, it's understanding what are the right tools to use at the right time with the right message. So what tools do you have at your, what tools can you use? So there's phone, there is email, there's video, and potentially instant messaging. So that's sort of the 4 things that you have within your arsenal as virtual leaders. I think we've lost the art of picking up the phone and having conversations. People are sending emails, and there's a lot of email overload in the system, and that can create a lot of stress. So I would think hard about how you communicate and what tool you use. So for instance, I think if you want to connect with your team, with an individual, maybe with a question or a check-in, pick up the phone and have that conversation with them. I would suggest using video for your one-to-ones and video for your team meetings with camera on so that you can have that connection. Limit email where possible. So one of my big bugbears is I've seen leaders in the past who are, you know, there's a cascade of information coming to them and they're just firing it out left, right and center without any real thought as to how that's going to land with their team. So if there's urgent information, figure out a way of how you disseminate that through your team. If there's other stuff that's not so urgent, I would collate all of that communication and bring it into a team meeting. And that does a couple of things. It helps you know that your team have received the information. It gives you the opportunity to talk through some of that information, to clarify anything that's not clear. So, and then instant messaging, if you've got quick questions or you want to create a team collaboration, it might be you use a team WhatsApp, or you want to share like small bits of information. So just be mindful that you're not overloading your team. We talked last week about building and maintaining a team meeting etiquette, and the importance of this is to bring structure to your team meetings, but also to help them flow in the most appropriate in the most appropriate way. So some of the things I would suggest are having video on, and we talked about this last week. It's about connecting with your people first and foremost, but also seeing what's going on with them. And you can read from their body language, their voice, their tone. If there's something that's not quite right, it gives you the opportunity to address that in a separate meeting. I would say trying to reduce your meetings to 45 minutes, and that's what I'm going to try and do today, because that, you know, allows you and your team 15 minutes at the end to go out, grab a cup of coffee, have a bio break, go get some fresh air, whatever it takes to help you reset yourself for the next call. I think that's it, you know, that just helps give you a little bit of more energy. Other things I would suggest is having an agenda that helps guide the conversation. On Zoom calls, it can get distracted, so it just brings you back to what's important for that particular meeting. I would suggest that you put names beside the different elements in the team so that people know that you're going to be coming to them, asking questions so that they're prepared and they've got the right level of information in front of them. And then also the other stuff like, you know, mute. Again, that's a personal choice for you as the leader. I would say phones off, no answering emails in the middle of all of that, etc. And then last but not least, it's about being consistent. So consistent in terms of how you're communicating, and consistent in terms of the rhythm of a team's week, day and week. If your consistency allows you to build more credibility with your team, and it allows you to be more accountable and your team to be more accountable to you. So I think being consistent helps you show up as a stronger leader. So Michelle, anything going on there?
Well, actually, Glenn Tracy and Mary Cork have both come back on the communications, and you've touched on it a little bit already, Deirdre, but maybe just to bottom out the communications overload look like. As we know, we're in a lot of meetings at the moment. So how do you manage communications overload?
Okay, so I think, so some of the suggestions that I've talked through is, and this is not just your responsibility as a leader, it's your organization's responsibility to ensure that you've got one message cascaded. You know, so it's and maybe it's having a steering committee who's pulling all of the information and all of the information that somebody might need, pulling it all into one place. So either on your intranet or in an email, and that email is going out maybe every couple of days, so that it's all channeled and cascaded in one way. Excuse me. I would say not forwarding every single email that you get that's got a message in it to your teams. So as I said, collating all of that together and then deciding whether it's in your team meeting or in another format, how you pull all that together so that you're feeding it in one instance to your team, and you're not sending 20 million emails on the same thing. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. I would just to mention with regard to Glenn, he questioned around the rhythm, but I think you've covered that.
Yeah, and I'll come back to rhythm when I talk about productivity.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so productivity. So before COVID-19, there were a lot of leaders out there and a lot of businesses that felt that that their business couldn't be run in a virtual world. And you know, I'll caveat that with there are some jobs that can't be done virtually. But what I would say to you is that, you know, we find ourselves in the situation now. We've all had to adapt really quickly. So before, when people would say, oh, you know, I don't trust that my teams are going to do the right thing, or they're doing their job when they're sitting at home on Netflix or whatever it might be. What I would say to you is the good news, and there's numerous studies done on this, is that teams or individuals that work virtually tend to be more productive than in an office space. And there's lots of different reasons for that. Excuse me, I just want to take a sip of water. I'm losing my voice. So there's lots of different reasons for that. So you're less distracted. So, you know, when you're in a physical environment with lots of people, there's people coming up interrupting you throughout the day. So at home, you don't have that. So you can be a lot more focused on the task at hand. People tend to take less breaks. I am encouraging you to try and take more breaks. So, but studies show that people do tend to take less breaks. And also, I think people tend to take less sick days as well. So that's what some of the studies show us. In terms of ensuring that teams are doing the right thing, the first thing is that you need to set them up for success. So ensuring that they've got the right equipment, so in terms of laptop screens, the basic stuff. So ensuring that all the physical stuff is there, but also the tools that they need to do their job are available to them, and they've got access to all of the information that they need to be successful in their job. So getting the basics right and the foundations of how somebody starts their day is important. We talked about setting expectations. Same applies for setting goals. And I don't know if you know the whole concept of SMART goals. So ensuring that your teams are setting SMART goals for themselves. I would empower your team to do this. You don't have all of the answers right now. There's so much going on and you're so busy doing lots of other things. Really encouraging your team and empowering your team to set some of these goals, I think, is a great way of getting them connected, getting them working together, and building trust across the team. Checking in regularly. So this is one that brought me back to a memory a good few years ago when I was working at IBM. I was in Dublin, and this was before I moved to London. So I was in Dublin and I had a team of client execs in the UK. They had a portfolio of clients that they managed. And I had asked them, I had spent a lot of time building out this marketing campaign, which I wanted them to take into their top accounts so that we could build pipeline for the business. So I set the scene, gave them the task, and then I was, 2 weeks went on, and I didn't see this increase in pipeline that I had expected. So that was quite frustrating. So I brought them all together, and it was the biggest kick up the backside for me as a leader that I've had in a long time, because what I discovered was people had taken the brief, some just didn't understand it, but they didn't ask. I hadn't checked in with them. They hadn't asked me what I really wanted them to do, so they did nothing. Some decided that they were going to do something completely different, and they went off on a tangent and did a completely different task. So what I learned from that experience was it's really important to check in on a regular basis. And again, it goes back to, I'm not talking about micromanagement. I'm just checking in to see, do you understand what I'm asking? Are you good? Are you reaching, is there any roadblocks that you need me to help you with? Coaching them through those roadblocks, giving them feedback in terms of how they're performing against the task. So just really connecting with your team and not allowing them just to flounder out there in the ethernet trying to figure this stuff out for themselves, because they can waste so much time doing that. So developing processes and procedures. So a good few companies got caught on the hop around procedures and having those procedures documented, especially for some of their more junior people and for individuals that might be new into the organization. So they would have had their buddy or their mentor sitting close to them, and they would have been able to ask questions on in terms of how to get things done. And now that they don't have that person, they're not necessarily putting up their hand and asking for help. So I've seen that people are spending tons of time trying to figure stuff out and wasting huge amounts of their energy and time when, if you had that documented, it would have been so much easier, or encouraging them to ask questions would have been also a lot more productive. Energy management, we talked about this at the start. So, I talked about you managing your energy. I read a great article, and I might actually give it to Michelle to send out to you guys. It was from Harvard Business School, and it was written this last week, and it's around burnout. And what you can find in a virtual world is people can tend to burn out quicker than they would in a physical environment. And there's lots of reasons for that. One is boundaries, which we talked about. So not, working late into the night, it might be you see them start sending emails at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it might be. So looking out for those signs that people just aren't, they're working too many hours, or their hours are a little bit skew. And we do have to be flexible in our current environment. I absolutely appreciate that. If you've got two parents at home, or even one parent at home with dogs and kids and all sorts of stuff, you need to be flexible in terms of what your expectation is of that individual and how they're going to manage it. And it might be that some people might need to spend more time with their children during the day and then work into the evening. But just, again, allowing for that flexibility is important, but monitor it and manage it so that individuals aren't burning out. and suggest some ways around helping them manage the different levels of energy. So we talked about physical energy, emotional energy, spiritual energy, and your mental energy, and maybe bringing that into your team meeting and coming up with some suggestions around how you might support that. And again, I'm going to ask the participants if you've seen any good energy management strategies. I would love if you could share them with everybody so that we can all learn. So that's it in terms of productivity, Michelle. Anything?
Yeah, well, I'd like to just affirm what you're saying. Lyndon popped up there saying, could we share the earlier research that you referred to, which we will do, and obviously that Harvard piece as well. Two questions here. Peter Fox further up, which I thought was quite interesting, asking, WhatsApp as a tool, should we keep that as a fun tool? Is there an etiquette around which tools we're using to manage our teams?
So I think probably a suggestion would be to get buy-in for your team at the start. So empower your team to tell you what's the best way for you to communicate with them and what are the best tools to use. So I think if you give them the choice, that will help you then know what's going to land well with them. So there's lots of different collaboration tools out there. There's lots of instant messaging tools, file sharing tools. I know Slack is one that I've used in the past. That was a good way of connecting and building collaboration across your team. So I'm not an expert in the whole technical piece. So again, share if people have got some good suggestions, I'd encourage them to share.
That's great, Deirdre, because another Clodagh Kavanagh, it's great to see you here as well this morning. Clodagh had popped a question in earlier about the best platforms for sharing documents and projects. But from what you're saying, Deirdre, I'm hearing that it's as much about what the team normally uses.
Yeah, so your organization will have determined what those tools are. I think in terms of project management and file sharing, Asana is probably one of the ones that's most popular. And there's another one called Proof Hub that is well known in the market. And both of those are both enterprise and small business tools that help with project management. Slack for building collaboration across your team. So I'm not an expert, but happy to share any research that I might have on that topic with the participants. Okay, so thank you, Michelle.
Pleasure.
So that brings us towards the end of our session today. Like this, it goes so fast. So there's 4 things that I would love you to take away. So the first is being really clear with your team, setting those goals and expectations. And what that does, it takes all that fogginess away. It helps your team know what's important, what the priority is, and it will then help them be more productive in terms of their day and week. One of the questions was around establishing a team rhythm. So your team rhythm is around, it's both communication and productivity. So it's how are you going to perform your day's work, your week's work? How are you as the leader going to help communicate what's important? What are the different meetings throughout your week that will create structure for your team? So your huddles, your team meetings, your one-to-ones. And what I would really emphasize here is try and keep that structure as routine as possible, especially when, especially one-to-ones. Like if you start messing around with people's one-to-ones, that's really going to impact their morale. It's going to help, they'll feel that they're not valued within the organization, and that can have an overall impact. So try and keep to the structure and try and keep to it, the rhythm of your week as much as possible. Creating strong team engagement. So this goes back to supporting your team with the right tools to collaborate. Creating fun and energy within your team, so ensure that it's not just all serious all the time, and hopefully we've got some suggestions from the audience around how we can do that, on top of the ones that I gave earlier. And then last but not least, I think this is the best opportunity for you to enhance your skills as a leader. So this is an amazing opportunity for you to learn new skills, learn new habits, I would really embrace this situation, because this virtual world is not going away. It's, you know, our ways of working are going to change, or fundamentally change, when we come out of COVID-19 and we go back into the world that we came from. That world's going to look very different. So I think if you have enhanced your skills now, that's only going to add value to you as a leader as we progress into this new world. So that's it from me this morning. I'd like to just say a big thank you for your time and attention. I really appreciate you being here with me this morning and with the UCD Smurfit Executive Development team. Hopefully I can't see the chatter, so I'm hoping that we've got some great ideas and we've got some great things to share with you all. So Michelle and I will pull all of that together, and any other questions that I've missed out on, we'll pull all that together. I'm going to leave the meeting open for another sort of 5 to 8 minutes to give you an opportunity to put any comments in, any feedback that you might have, and any sort of ideas that you have, please do pop those in. So that's it from me this morning. I want to wish you a great day. I look forward to meeting you again. Thank you very much.